Guess not. All right. Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to episode 3 of Mental Dimes College Football, very special edition. This is Conference Championship Week. So, as always, with you is Coach Tuck and myself, NG Triplet. Let us get to some introductions. So, if you want to interact with us, you can. Our Twitter handles, there's at Tuck underscore coach for Tuck, and mine is at NG Triplet. Hit us up on Twitter, get in the conversation. We also have a at Mental Dimes CFB Twitter page, and we also have just at Mental Dimes, which is our main Mental Dimes Twitter. I say Twitter X, formerly known as Twitter page or Twitter. So feel free to connect with us there. Also have a Facebook page, Mental Dimes, as well as a YouTube channel. So please feel free to hit us up there. If you're watching live, jump in the conversation in the comments section. Otherwise, get at us on any of our accounts, X accounts, YouTube, or as I said, Facebook. So anyway, introductions out of the way. Tuck, how's everything going? How was your Thanksgiving? And let's get to some conference championship week talk.
Thanksgiving was great. Ate way too much pumpkin pie. Paying for it, but it was a good time with family, and that's all that really matters.
Absolutely.
How about you? Did you eat well?
It was great. I ate well. Went down to Galveston, Texas, with took my wife obviously, and then we saw my dad and my sister and brother. So it was a really great time to recharge. But now we're back at it. Had some great football, so we'll talk about some of that stuff. Absolutely. So thought we would just get into it and let's kind of recap some of the big games from last week. Let's talk the crazy ending, the ending of the Iron Bowl that gets the kick six out of everybody's mind, the ending or the game between Alabama and Auburn. Auburn played as well as they could for a very long time, and then obviously everybody is remembering now the ending sequence there, 4th and 31, and Milroe gets the deep pass to Isaiah Bond, touchdown, game over. But kind of we backtrack a little, setting that up. Kay Moore had a chance maybe to ice this thing. Alabama punts. He's not, Kay Moore for Auburn is not the normal punt returner. He's gone into fair catch the ball, slip. The ball hits him. He falls on his back. Alabama recovers. They don't score right away. They obviously get into that 4th and 31, but what a crazy ending, what a crazy game, and maybe kind of what you expect from when those two teams play. But what did you make of that game, and what did you make of that ending?
A lot of me wanted to lose faith in Alabama. Just like you and I were talking before we went live, Auburn's rolling out the former Michigan State quarterback that was about to get benched for Noah Kim, who got benched for Caden Hauser, who has now entered the transfer portal. Like, how low was he at Michigan State? And he almost leads a miraculous victory. But at the same point, I mean, you look at the top 10, other than Oregon, everybody struggled. It was really close for everybody. So do I want to lose faith in Alabama? Yeah, but at the same point, I'm going to hold off on, the fire sale.
All right, fair enough. Obviously, that win was huge for Alabama, keeps them in the hunt for the college football playoff. So we'll get to that. Obviously, probably the game of the week, maybe the game of the year going into it was maybe a team that you may have heard of, Michigan Wolverines. Ohio State came into Ann Arbor. And what did you think of that game? I know we talked last week. You thought maybe this was Ohio State's year. Michigan survives, I guess maybe is the best way to put it. Really a gutsy last drive, a way to cap that game. But what are your thoughts on that Michigan-Ohio State game?
Wow. I thought Ryan Day would be the aggressor, and I thought Sharon Moore would be cautious. I know my dad had a buddy, bought a brand new Corvette and let his son drive it. And he's like, it's not yours, kid. Don't break it. And I kind of felt like that's what Sharon Moore would have been thinking. It's not my Corvette that Jim just handed me. I better. And Ryan Day, in my mind, was coaching for his life. And Sharon Moore goes for it on 3 fourth downs. He is like, no, we're gonna do this. He pulls out the pitch to Donovan Edwards for the long pass. I don't know that Michigan's run more than 3 pitches all season. And they've done this to Ohio State before. Like, as soon as that pitch went out, you had to know that it was being thrown. But at least, hey, Sharon Moore mixed it up a couple times here and there. I thought the big thing was Sharon Moore was the aggressor and Ryan Day played not to lose. And anytime you play not to lose, you lose. Did you have a different take on that?
No, I think you're spot on. I thought it was a little bit of a vanilla game plan. And, I look at some of the stats in that game. The big thing for me was turnovers. Ohio State had 2, Michigan had 0. But you look at the run game, I really thought that there would be a bigger edge, and there wasn't. I think it was 107 rush yards for Ohio State and 156 for Michigan. But here's a pretty big time of possession was 26 minutes for Ohio State and 33 for Michigan. So really they held on to the ball longer. They did not turn it over. And then quarterback play, McCord was 18 to 30, 271, 2 TDs, but the 2 interceptions. Granted, the last one, end of the game. And then McCarthy was 16 of 20 for 148 with 1 TD. So efficient, not electric necessarily offensively running the ball or passing, but did enough, didn't make the mistake. And ultimately, like you said, they were more aggressive going for it in 4th down with pitch and pass play. Man, hats off to them. Michigan playing kind of under duress a little bit still without Jim Harbaugh. And we kind of talked last week that maybe they would, 1 of 2 things could happen. They could kind of fall apart, or they could circle the wagons and rally the troops and us against the world. And that's what it looked like they did. You brought up an issue last week, and because the game was so close, I want to see if this changes anything. But you thought that maybe this could cost Ryan Day his job. It's the 3rd straight win by Michigan over Ohio State. What are your thoughts on that at this point?
So, we've talked about this and we've bandied it back and forth, but I re-looked it up. Ryan Day, 56-7. That is an 88.9 win percentage. His losses, 3 to Michigan, Alabama, in, I think, the national championship, Georgia, and really what was the better game, that was the national championship, even though it wasn't, a loss to Oregon early in the season, and a loss to Clemson in the playoffs. I think that was the playoffs. Those are all elite programs. Now, you could argue maybe Oregon is not elite, but they're ranked 5th. That's a pretty elite program. Urban Meyer, 90.2 win percentage. Pretty comparable.
Absolutely.
And everybody's like, oh, Urban, bring Urban back. Well, it's pretty similar. This was the one that shocked me. Jim Tressel, the sweater vest himself. Everybody's like, oh, the good old Jays of Jim Tressel. 82.2% win total. Ryan Day has the better win percentage.
Sure.
He makes it to the playoffs. Just as much as about anybody. So he is doing, in my opinion, a great job. But I said, if he loses, his seat is so hot. And you look, Maurice Collette, Terrell Pryor, all these heavy hitters in Ohio State lore are coming out. Axe them, get rid of them, get rid of them, get rid of them. Do I think they'll get rid of them? Not this year. Should they get rid of him? No. The guy is doing a great job. You just have Michigan has built their entire roster to beat Ohio State. And I thought that the last 2 years, Ohio State got manhandled by Michigan, just bullied. This year, I didn't really, like you said, the difference in rush was not that different. So I think Ryan Day is starting to get his team to be a rough and tumble team that can play with the physical teams. And I think he's trying to keep that finesse. Um, so I would say give him one more year. And if he loses again, you fire him, not because he deserves it, but because that's what college football is now. It's, can you beat the one team that we want you to beat? Did you watch the HBO special on the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry?
I did not.
I watched it last night. It's like I live it in Michigan, but I guess I didn't realize how far back it went and how vitriolic it is. And I agree with Jim Harbaugh. It's too much. Like, we have made this way too big of a deal. But that's not going to change anything.
No, absolutely not. And it's really interesting kind of being outside of that. You know, you look at a Ryan Day and you look at that winning percentage, and any other team in the country, except for, you know, Georgia, Alabama would love to have that. You know, it's kind of a first world problem that, okay, so he loses one game a year. He's lost whatever 6 in however many years, and people think that's not good enough. You know, the people clamoring for Urban Meyer, as good a coach as he was, you remember the kind of the messes he made of programs. Sure, he was, you know, maybe slightly above in that winning percentage, got some national championships, but boy, he left those organizations, not just in the NFL, but a mess in the colleges when he left. And there's no evidence that Ryan Day is doing anything but doing it the right way. So take a deep breath. I know it's frustrating to lose to your rival, but boy, I mean, if one, who are you going to get that's better? And then two, who's going to want to, I think we talked about last week, who's going to want to step into that job if the expectation is you win every game every year, but especially you win that one, you know, and you know, I think it's a unrealistic goal, but like I said, it's not changing. And those coaches that take that job, they know the expectation going in, but it doesn't make it right or fair.
No. Here's a question for you. This is off script for us, so I'm putting you on the spot.
All right, let's do it.
Urban Meyer. Yeah, he's won, 3 national championships, was it? Could he win in today's college football with his coaching style of, I'm just as hard as nails, I'm Woody Hayes, I'm Bo Schembechler, I'm Bobby Knight, and I'm going to beat you into submission?
Great question, and the answer emphatically is no, because obviously in the NFL you can't, because a lot of those players are making more money than you. But now with the NIL, but also the ability to the transfer portal, people will be like, I'm not tolerating that. Particularly now he has that reputation of how he treated those NFL players. So people are going to be looking out for that. So I don't think that he can, unless he undergoes a major coaching mentality shift, in which case I don't think he would be as effective anyway. So I do not think, I think he knows that it's not that the game has changed, surpassed him or passed him up, because he's still a great mind, but the way you treat players and what the players will accept. And I think the power now is the power balance has shifted, where it's not, the coach doesn't have all the power.
100% agree with you on that.
All right, real quick, we won't spend a lot of time on this Oregon State game because it wasn't much of a game. But they won. Oregon wins 31-7 for their rivalry. Bo Nix, 367 yards, 2 TDs. I think that's probably what most of us expected. But those were kind of the 3 kind of big rivalry games, I thought, that had some intrigue to them. Obviously, there was some other games, but these ones all had potential college football playoff implications, or not potential college playoff implications. So thought we should talk about those. Let's get into. I'll let you talk about it, but we kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago with the Ryan Day. But boy, what's going on with this coaching carousel?
If you like Keeping Up with the Kardashians or the Real Housewives series, you have got to love Texas A&M right now. Because, oh my word, I'm trying to think. There's that old saying, it's a train wreck or a dumpster fire and a train wreck. You know the saying I'm thinking of.
I mean, I know those expressions, but I don't know the a specific phrase.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
All
It
right.
is all of those things together. What happened? What do you think? Did Stoops accept the job, do you think?
Absolutely. I think it was a done deal. I did some reading stuff, and he had told some family and friends, even I think some of his staff, that he was leaving. And I think, from everything that I could find online, which doesn't mean it's accurate stuff, was that, and A&M made him that offer, that some of the boosters and regents who said, look, we don't support this, and we're not on board with it. And so the job offer was rescinded by one account at 1:02 in the morning. So he had been offered, accepted it, kind of let his friends and staff know, and then at 1:02 in the morning, the offer was rescinded. And kind of what I could deduce from reporting online was that the regents and boosters did not support him, even though he's the winningest coach in Kentucky history. He still has a very poor SEC record, and he had 2 10-3 seasons, but the last one of those was in 2021. He's sitting at overall 73-64 with just a 533 winning percentage, 4-3 in bowl games. And look, 11 years at Kentucky. I get Kentucky, the basketball powerhouse, perennial, and he did revive it, rebuild it, bring them to some relevance. But that was not enough for the A&M people. And I was a little perplexed when I heard that he was the guy, not because I don't think he can coach, but more because I think that in this day and age of wanting to make a splash, but also, man, maybe trying to take your time and get this hire right, so that you're not having another buyout and that kind of thing. And I know that I believe the portal opens December 4th, so I think there was some pressure to try to get somebody in place quickly, but boy, it blew up, backfired, and how embarrassing for Texas A&M University.
So I took a different slant in my readings on this. I agree with you. I think the regents run Texas A&M football and the boosters, and I don't think it's the AD running it. Correct. But I think the AD was like, oh, this is a great idea, and he rolled it out. It's like, you meet a girl and you take her to meet your family and your friends, and like, isn't she great? And they look at you and they're like, she's ugly and has no personality. What were you thinking? And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. This isn't a winner here. So, I mean, I think that was going on, but I think because they talked about how Stoops after the game went out and celebrated with friends and staff and talked to them, and everything that I've heard is indicating that a lot of his staff were like, not chance, we ain't going there. We have no desire to be part of that. And I think he was like, oh, maybe this isn't a good idea. So I think he was backing out as the boosters and regents and the AD pulled that. Okay. So I think I thought it was a mutual thing, but yeah, I was surprised that he was their guy, but I don't think we should be. I said it last week that A&M is not a plum job. So I looked it up. This is the number of double-digit wins in a season. So how many seasons did each of these teams have double-digit wins? I didn't look at Georgia and Alabama because that's every year. Sure. That's just a given. But I looked in the 2000s. So in the 2000s, Florida had 9 double-digit winning seasons, Tennessee 5, LSU 12, Ole Miss 4, Auburn 5, Kentucky had 2, Mizzou had 6, only 2 in the SEC, but they still had 6. South Carolina 3, Arkansas 3, 1 for Texas A&M.
Is that the Johnny Manziel year?
I think so, yes. And Mississippi State 1, Vanderbilt 0. I don't think Vanderbilt has had 10 wins in a 10-year period put together. So you can't count Vanderbilt. They're not a real team. Sorry, Vanderbilt, but you're not a real team. The Texas A&M, the people think that they're like, oh, we could be first tier SEC. Not based on that. Now, you look at the Tennessees, the Floridas, they have really high highs and really low lows. Texas A&M is pretty steady. 7 wins, 7 wins, 7 wins. Okay, 10 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins, 5 wins, 7 wins. I mean, they're oatmeal. They're just going to get through. So I think if you're oatmeal, you can't expect Flame and Yon to be lined up next to you. You're going to get skim milk.
Like the analogy. So let's shift over then to who they did hire. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he's a good fit for 2 reasons. One, I think he can coach. I don't think it really matters. You look at Jimbo, averaged 11 wins a game at Florida State and 7.5 at A&M. He had a natty with Florida State, nothing at A&M. But I think Elko showed he can coach. He can coach the snot out of the game. So I think he's a good coach. But he was on that A&M staff. He knows what he's getting into.
Correct.
He knows the culture. And that's why I think he's those 2 reasons make him a great fit. Do you agree, or do you have a different thought?
No, I do agree. He limited head coaching experience. He's 16-9, which is just over 50%, 56% winning percentage. 7-5 this year, but we're talking about football at Duke. So so that's difficult to do. But I do think that the relationships, having been a defensive coordinator at A&M, will serve him well. He knows that culture. He knows that area. He can recruit there. And, 16-9 doesn't sound fantastic. But, again, you're going to a school that is a basketball school that had been football as an afterthought. And he kind of brought them to some prominence. Interesting stuff about his contract. I don't know if you looked into this. But and I think this was smart on A&M to do this in light of what happened. So the first thing is he's got this buyout clause. So in years, it's a 6-year contract for $42 million. Okay, and then we'll get into the incentive. So, but in years 1 through 3, if they want to buy him out, he gets 75% of his remaining contract. Years 4 through 6, it would jump to 80%. So the buyout would be 80% of his remaining contract. But here are some incentives that could bump him up to nearly an additional $11 million. So the first couple are relatively small as compared to, in the millions. $50,000 if he's the SEC Coach of the Year, $100,000 if he's the National Coach of the Year, $100,000 bonus if he makes the SEC Championship game, and then $1 million bonus for college football playoff appearance. $1.5 million for a quarterfinal appearance or an SEC championship win, not appearance. $2 million if he's a semifinalist in the college football. $2.5 million if he's in the national championship game, and then $3.5 if he wins it all. So it's a $42 million contract that could go up to close to $53 million if he were to hit all those incentives. So certainly it looks like they were a little more cautious with the money in light of the buyout with Jimbo. But still, what is that, $7 million a year plus incentives? So, and I think that's very reasonable because While we just talked about why we think he is a good fit, he does have limited experience, and so I think it's a prudent contract. And here's the deal: if he were to hit some of those bonuses, then now they're going to be talking about redoing his contract, and he'll get paid. So I think it's a fair contract, and I like the way it's structured. As an A&M fan.
What are your thoughts? Just give me your thoughts about incentives in a contract. Do you think there should be incentives?
I don't think every contract should have incentives, but I think when the situation is something of maybe a little bit of an unknown quantity, one where you're taking maybe a little bit of a calculated risk, I think incentives can do that. Or if you don't have the money up front, but you think we can get that money to reward performance, I think it's warranted it. I don't think necessarily a Nick Saban, if he were to go elsewhere, would accept, but nor incentives would not be warranted. But Elko with 2 years under his belt, taking a major step into the SEC, it is a bit of a calculated risk. I think a good risk, but I think incentives are reasonable in that case.
I'm not a fan. I grew up in a blue collar family, and we were union through and through. And one of the earliest things my dad said to me, he said, "Son, if you make the union look bad, you don't deserve to live." Like, that was the mindset.
Right.
Like, when you work, you go all out. Incentives? My dad, what incentive? It's called pay. We paid you. There's your incentive to do the job right. So I don't know. Like, I'm just not an incentive guy. It's like, maybe you should, and I don't like the incentives the way they are. Hey, get coach of the year, $100,000. Do the best job in the world. 100,000. Oh, you go and win a national championship? That's $1 million. Shouldn't that be like, I don't know, to me that's backwards.
Right.
But
interesting take. Yeah, I could kind of see that perspective. I don't have a problem with it, but again, different mindsets. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, both Elko and A&M were okay with it. So
yep.
I guess more power to both of them.
Speaking about incentives, I want to get your take on the Jonathan Smith hire at Michigan State, because he had a bunch of incentives too. So it's just kind of a nice time to talk. What did you think about the Jonathan Smith to MSU?
Man, I thought it was a curious decision on both sides. I think right now, I think Oregon State is probably the better job. I think there's a mess that needs to be cleaned up at Michigan State, and I think it's going to be very tough to win there, at least in the short term. But I also look at Jonathan Smith. He's 34-35 overall at Oregon State. He was 10-3 in 2022, a little bit of a step back this year, 8-4. So I kind of don't think this is a great fit for either side. I think if I'm Jonathan Smith, if I want to go elsewhere, one, I think hopefully improve my resume, but is this really the job I want to walk into? And then if I'm Michigan State, a very prominent Big Ten school, I mean, not on the level, obviously, football wise, but I mean, is this what we're going with, a 34-35 record? This is what we're going to bring in to fix this mess. So I thought it was a curious decision on both their parts. If I were Jonathan Smith, I don't think I would have accepted that. I think I would have stayed in Oregon State. I think it's a better job, more secure, and better chance to win.
Even with the fact, and I mean, everything you just said, and I was just in Oregon this summer. I live in Michigan. I love Michigan. We have the Great Lakes. It's beautiful. Oregon, especially in that area, you have mountains, you have the ocean. You don't have cell reception. There's like no cell reception once you get out of the big city. But it is the most beautiful area. The Pacific Northwest is just beautiful. Why would you leave? And this is an interesting little tidbit that I found, and of course now I can't find it. Nick Saban at Michigan State was barely above 500 with his win percentage. And now we consider him to be the Bill Belichick of college football. So even the greatest coach struggled at Michigan State. But here's the one thing that made me say this might be a good thing. The Pac-12 folding. Do you still think, with the uncertainty in the Pac-12, he should have stayed?
Well, that's a very fair question. I still think there's a better job now. Where are they going to end up? It is an unknown quantity there, but they are Oregon State, so they're going to end up somewhere. Somebody's going to want them in the conference, and I still think career-wise, it's a better job right now. Now, look, 5 years from now, or maybe 5 years ago, before this whole mess up there, maybe you look at it like this is a step up. But right now, man, you could be the guy who goes in and you get a pat on the back as they're firing you. Thanks for cleaning up this mess. Now it's a more attractive job for someone else.
Yep.
So
that's a very fair point. I think staying would have been a gamble, because if they're going to play a Mountain West schedule, that's basically what they're going to do. Their conference is now Mountain West. If you don't go 10-2 playing Mountain West and Washington State, your stock plummeted. I think he got out because he's like, I'll take the bag and the sure thing instead. No, but on the flip side, if he goes 10-2 for 2 years, Oregon finds its place, or then he's like, look at me. I'm, 40 wins over the last 4 years. Look how good I am. I think it was a risk. I think I would have taken that risk, because I think you're right. Michigan State is a mess right now, and the Big Ten's not going to get easier.
No.
Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are going to be those three. You're bringing in two very good teams in Oregon and Washington. USC, UCLA have a lot of a lot of history. Iowa, we can laugh at them. Their best offensive weapon is the punt.
Yes,
but
you're right.
At the same point, it works to 10 wins. They win 9 they get 9 wins every season almost. So you're not going to come into an easy situation where you're just going to, you're going to probably be 7-5 on a good year for a while.
I agree. So, all right. Anything else on the coaching carousel you want to run around or run down?
Do you want to talk about James Franklin and him being on the hot seat?
I think we should. I think it's man, he's on the outside looking in as far as the elite coaches in the Big Ten, and you're up there in Big Ten country. You tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
He's being judged. So last 2 years, he's lost 2 games, Michigan and Ohio State. Everybody in the Big Ten has lost to Michigan and Ohio State the last 2 years. Basically, the last 3 years. Michigan State got Michigan the 1 game, but that was on a fluke. No, it's a win's a win. I'm not going to take it away. But they put in J.J. McCarthy, and he fumbled the ball, and that led to the game-winning touchdown. Why you put a freshman in that situation to ice the game, I don't know, but Harbaugh did, and it backfired. So basically, the last 3 years, Michigan and Ohio State are untouchable. I don't think it's fair. At the same point, what you hear is he has the talent to beat these teams. He just can't do it. Michigan State doesn't have the talent. Maryland doesn't have the depth. Iowa doesn't have an offense. These teams, they don't have the talent to hang. Penn State has the talent, And the fact that now this year was close. Both teams, they kept it close with both teams, but at the end of the day, they still lost. So again, how can you really complain about a 10-2 season? But is that good enough?
Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to the comments we made earlier. Like, yes, you could get rid of him, but 10-2, who are you going to get that's better?
Mm-hmm.
Because really what you're saying is to do better, then you got to come in and at least go 11-1, meaning you've got to knock off one of those two every year on top of winning all the other games. And like you said, nobody's been able to do that. Ryan Day hasn't been able to do it because he doesn't have to play himself. So he's just lost to Michigan 3 straight time, And so, I don't know who they think that they're going to get that's going to be turn the page. But it is an interesting point and I don't know if it's an accurate statement or not, but if they do have the talent, equal talent or very close talent, then maybe I certainly understand the idea that all things being equal or close to equal, it is the coaching. But you just have to be careful what you wish for, because just because maybe he can't win those doesn't mean somebody else can. And the Big Ten is different. It's a different animal. And if you bring somebody in that doesn't understand that, you may be 7-5 instead of 10-2.
Perfect example is Wisconsin and Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell was the darling hire, and they're like, "Oh, Wisconsin has a chance to go to the playoffs." Now it's the first year; he's got to get his people in, but even if you get the right person at Penn State, it's going to take a year or two, like you said, 7-5 years to get the people to play the way you want. I'm interested to see how, like, the UCLAs, the Oregon, the Washingtons, how they handle the Big Ten, because it's a slugfest. The Pac-12 is, let's air it out, let's put up big numbers, defense be darned.
Right.
Big Ten is more, other than Ohio State, the Big Ten is offense be darned, let's lock you up.
Right.
So that's going to be and the temperature. I don't know what it's like in Texas where you are right now, but I've got snow on the ground.
Well, we are supposed to warm back up tomorrow. I say warm back up because we're at night we've been in the 50s. So tomorrow during the day it's supposed to be low 70s. So we're good down here.
I won't see 70 for another 6 months. So I won't see 50 for another 6 months. So
we go the opposite. Once we hit about April, then we'll be mid 90s, and then once we get into late May, we won't see below 100 until mid September. So we got the opposite side there.
Yep.
So all right,
jump to Heisman race.
All right, let's take a look at that. And obviously there was some talk of you probably saw the quote, give me the Heisman from Jalen Milroe, which I think maybe was a little bit premature there. But I do want to talk about the Heisman race and a little bit about what the odds are looking like as far as from the Vegas standpoint, and then we can give our picks and what we think who it's going to be. So obviously, I'm not going to go through everyone on there, but I thought I'd go through the top kind of three and talk about that. So really, you've got Bo Nix at Oregon, and he is, where are my notes here? Okay, so he is he's the favorite right now according to Vegas, minus 180. He's sitting at 3,906 yards, 37 TDs, 2 interceptions with a 189.8 rating. Jaden Daniels from LSU is second at plus 125, 3,812 yards, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 208.8. And then Michael Penix Jr., his stock dropped a little bit. He struggled this week against Washington State. He's at plus 1,800. He's got 3,899 yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 163.3. Obviously, there's been some talk of Marvin Harrison Jr. Outside chance, Jalen Milroe, but really I think those three, Bo Nix at Oregon, Jaden Daniels at LSU, and Michael Penix Jr. at Washington I would think are the true clear front runners. We kind of talked last week. Look, Bo Nix had an impressive game, 367 yards, 2 TDs, but boy, Jaden Daniels really he lit it up this past week. Not as many yards. He went 16 of 24 in a 42-30 win over A&M, but he had 4 touchdowns. So he really, brought those touchdown numbers up. And we kind of talked back and forth, and I've kind of thought about those conversations. I'm still sticking with Bo Nix. I think he's going to win it. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit more sold on Jaden Daniels in that who means more to their team. And it's really difficult to argue either one of those. But I think I've come around a little bit more to Jaden Daniels, but I'm still think the committee is going to give it to Bo Nix. And I'm still siding. I'm still saying I would give it to Bo Nix too, but that gap is closed in my mind. What are your thoughts?
Heisman is best quarterback on the best team. And maybe not the best team, because that would then be Carson Beck, but it's best quarterback in the top 5. And I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know that's what the Heisman's supposed to be. Would I rather face Jaden Daniels or would I rather face Bo Nix? I probably would rather face Bo Nix. I don't think he's as explosive on the ground.
I would agree with that.
Maybe he's a little better in the air, but young Bo Nix had a lot of up and downs. And so I know I always wonder, is Bo Nix going to have an old Bo Nix game at the worst time? He had some last year. He's kind of cleaned it up this year. But, I mean, Jaden Daniels just rolls. He doesn't have a defense to save him. Oregon's defense is pretty sound. Like, it's actually not that bad. So the pressure isn't there. Oregon has 2 pretty solid running backs. They've got a lot better, more rounded team. But here's the interesting thing that I was thinking about. Marvin Harrison. Do you think that a wide receiver should be trumping all these quarterbacks?
Man, it's so hard because they get so much fewer opportunities, right? Because quarterback has the ball in his hands every play. He's either throwing it, handing it off, but he can, if he's a dual threat, he could run on the throw. So that they have less opportunities even than running backs, and certainly they've really gone away from running backs these getting a Heisman. But I do think I don't know that they should trump him, but I think he is a generational talent, and he's one that I think should be maybe more in the conversation than he is, in light of his quarterback is not a Bo Nix, not a Jaden Daniels. He's not bad. I don't mean anything negative, no disrespect to him, but he's kind of dominating with not a CJ Stroud. He's really proven what he can do, even with a little bit less experience, maybe less explosive quarterback. So he's one where I think that should be in the conversation, but I think it's just so difficult because of the lack of touches that they get. Now, in the old days where sometimes they would also be the punt returner and then, sometimes play some defense. I think you can do that, but man, I think I would like to see him in the conversation, but I don't know that I could justify it.
Okay, let me put it to you this way. You're a football coach.
Yes.
you've coached a lot of games.
Correct.
You coach in Texas, and football is king in Texas.
Very correct.
Football is almost God in Texas. Is that a fair statement?
That is a very fair statement.
Okay. God, football. Like that. Would you rather game plan against Jaden Daniels or Marvin Harrison?
I think I would rather game plan against Marvin Harrison. I think it's a little easier because you can, he's one guy, pretty much one dimensional. I mean, he's a receiver, like you can jet sweep him, but you can put a corner on him. You can put a safety over the top. You can kind of, particularly, and take your chances elsewhere. With the Jaden Daniels, I think, obviously he can throw. He doesn't have necessarily the weapons of a Marvin Harrison Jr., but he can also run. So now you're having to prepare kind of for two things. Like, look, we've got to make sure that we cover everybody because he can make those throws, but we also can't, just drop 7 into coverage because he'll take off and run. If you try to man everybody up, then he can run. So I think I'd rather have to game plan for one explosive receiver than one explosive quarterback.
Okay. And just as you were saying this, I thought that's what you were going to say. After the Michigan-Ohio State game, Harrison only caught 5 passes, but for 118 yards and a touchdown. He said, I have never seen so many double coverages and so many different coverages in my life. So Michigan, everybody's like, wow, look what they did to Marvin Harrison. $118 and a touchdown.
No. So he had more receiving yards than Ohio State had total rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty impressive.
So he is good. I don't know. I also think I would rather game plan a wide receiver at about any level than I would a really good dual threat quarterback.
Right. I agree with that. But I would like to see him continue to get some love and recognition. I mean, he's getting a ton, obviously, because how good he is. But sometimes when they start hyper focusing on those top Heisman candidates, they block everybody else out.
Yep. It has become a quarterback award.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so I think you've got some interesting. You've got an interesting little conundrum with the Mountain West. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I am so frustrated on this. I would pull my hair out, but I don't have much left, and I got to protect this. So there's going to be no hair pulling, but I really, really want to. You've got 3 6-2 teams: UNLV, Boise State, and San Jose State. They went to, now this is according to the Mountain West bylaws. First thing, conference record. All 3 teams 6-2. Second, let's go head to head. That makes sense. Boise State beat San Jose State. San Jose State beat UNLV. UNLV Boise State did not play. In my mind, you have a team that's 0-1 in that group. You have a team that's 1-1, and you have a team that's 1-0. There's your head-to-head to me.
Right.
The team that hasn't beaten anybody, UNLV had its shot, and they lost it. Well, since UNLV didn't get to play Boise State, we're not going to use it. Not going to use it. So then they go to CFP rating. Well, none of them made the top 25. So then that was out. So then they went to 4 different computerized rankings like Massey, averaged them out, and then said, okay, San Jose State, I know you just beat the team that was number 1 in the conference. But yeah, you don't deserve it. You get to stay home. That doesn't sit with me.
No, that doesn't. That I mean, I don't want to say political correctness, but it's almost, I think your point of the 0-1, 1-1, and 1-0 team, I think that with the head-to-heads, there's your tiebreaker.
Yep.
And if one team didn't get to play the other, I mean, that's unfortunate, but I mean, we always talk about settle it on the field. If you're that concerned, then make a provision that you're going to, if you can, have that conference championship a week later and have built in case something like this happens, you could schedule a one-game playoff if need be. But doing it as an average of some algorithm scores is everything anti-football. And settle it on the field. Bizarre.
Line them up in overtime. Each team gets 4 possessions, 2 against each team. Whoever has the most just wins. Forget, we're not going to play the game. We'll just do
right.
We'll do all those overtimes, and boom, life is good. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Tulane Southern Methodist?
Man, heartbroken that my Roadrunners didn't get the win against Tulane down in New Orleans, but kudos to Tulane. Man, my heart wants to go with SMU, but their quarterback Preston Stone is out with a broken leg, so I'm gonna have to go Tulane here. Tulane, I think, is a 3.5-point favorite. Both teams are at 8-0 in conference. I think it's stands to be a really good conference championship game. I wish Preston Stone could play. I feel terrible for him, not just because SMU might lose, but man, chance to play in this conference championship. But that to me is going to be the deciding factor, and I think Tulane is going to win that game and win the championship.
I also would like SMU to win, but it's Tulane.
Absolutely. So, all right. So let's talk college football playoff rankings, because this could get interesting. So I'm going to pull this up and let me get this off of there. And here are the most recent college football playoff rankings. If you're not watching, we'll read the top probably 8, because those are really the only ones that we need to talk about. Number 1 is Georgia. Number 2 is Michigan. Number 3 is Washington. Number 4 is Florida State. 5 is Oregon. 6 is Ohio State. 7 is Texas. And 8 is Alabama. So the deal is Georgia and Michigan and Washington for sure control their own destiny. And I'll tell you why I don't know that Florida does, because they're undefeated. And if they win their college or their conference championship games, they're in for sure. Okay. Florida State, I'm not so sure that that's the case. And it's not fair, but they're with the backup quarterback. So I don't know what the committee, how they're going to view that as far as not penalizing them, but in their mind, are they wanting to put the team with the best chance or the best team, the best top 4 teams, in which case Florida State has been all year, but right now, are they one of the best 4? I don't know if they're going to consider that or not, and I don't know that that's fair. So one, on those top 4, what are your thoughts on that before we get into the crazy one-loss team scenarios?
I think if you leave an undefeated Florida State team off, what is the point in playing? It means not at that point. It's just we're going for name recognition and ticket sales.
And I guess I should qualify that. I think they can only do that if one of the other top 3 gets a 1 loss. Then I don't know, because I guess if really where it would only come into play is if Bama beats Georgia.
Yep.
Because then you have those 2 with 1 loss. So you could make the argument Bama with the 1 loss was number 1. Georgia could get in. Georgia could still be in if Michigan's undefeated, and then Washington's undefeated. So I really don't think if those 4 win out, I guess I should have qualified that. I think they'll put them in, but where it could get tricky is if Alabama beats Georgia, for example.
And I think that's the only one that matters.
Yeah.
The one positive, and I'm the conspiracy guy.
Yes.
The SEC, there's always that conspiracy that the committee loves them, which I think you have to question that with Alabama sitting at 8 as the worst one-loss team. But I think Florida State has a big enough pull and draw based on their name that even with the backup quarterback, they can get in. If this was Louisville at 12-0 with a backup quarterback and wins, would a Louisville get in? I could see Louisville being left out. I could see a 12-0 Arizona getting left out. But I cannot see a 12-0 Florida State being left out.
Okay, so let's talk real quick. First of all, let's start with number 4. So it's Louisville and Florida State for the ACC championship. Louisville coming off a bad loss. Can Louisville upset Florida State with the backup quarterback?
Yes.
Okay, so obviously if that happens, Florida State is 100% out.
Yes.
So let's start there. So if Florida State loses, and let's say Georgia, Michigan, and Washington win, for the sake of this argument, who is in? I know right now Oregon's 5, Ohio State 6, Texas 7. In this situation, I'm saying Georgia 1, so Bama would be out because that'd be their second loss. So
Oregon would have a second loss too, though.
Oh, yeah, if they lost to Washington. So then it's Ohio State and Texas. So who gets in?
I think Texas jumps with the conference championship.
Okay. See, it's so hard. I think it goes the other way because I think that Texas's Alabama win is not as good now because Bama has 2 losses. So then I think Ohio State's only loss is to an undefeated number 2 Michigan. So I think Ohio State would get in.
Ohio State back-to-back years not winning a conference championship getting in. Now all of a sudden the SEC becomes the Big Ten, and it's a Big Ten conspiracy.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
So if you took last year out, but then again, Ohio State has gotten in. No. Ohio State has a huge name.
Yes.
But so does Texas. And I think it's safer to put Texas in and give some love to the Big 12 team that's going to the SEC.
Okay. All right, I can see that. All right, so let's just break this down. So now we've got those out there. What could happen? Well, two things. One, first, right now, before these games are played, who, in your opinion, is the best one-loss team?
Well, according to the CFP, Oregon.
Well, sure, but I want to know what do you think?
I don't know. I go to the Miss Universe pageant and pick the prettiest woman.
Okay, fair enough.
You're not. You can't go wrong.
No, you're right. All right, so let's start with we'll start with number 7 because I want to do Bama, Georgia a little bit later. So let's look at these conference championship games. Any chance Texas loses to Oklahoma State?
With Texas, yes.
Okay.
Should they? No.
All right. How about this? Will they? Right now, if you're picking, will Texas beat Oklahoma State?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with that. So they're still at 1 loss. Okay, so Ohio State is not in a conference championship. So Oregon. So this is another big one. Oregon and Washington, the rematch. Oregon's 1 loss is from Washington. Who wins this, in your opinion?
Here's a question for you. Okay. Let's say Oregon wins and beats Washington. Could Washington sneak in as a 1-loss team with its only loss with a split to Oregon?
My opinion is no chance. I think kind of some of what you said about name recognition. The Pac-12 isn't really highly respected as far as rating stuff, but they're not viewed necessarily as on the same football level as SEC, Big Ten. I think in order for Washington to get in, they have to win. They have to beat Oregon. If Oregon beats Washington, I guess it depends on who else loses, but I think neither one of them are. Well, Oregon could get in with a win based on what happens elsewhere, but I think Washington, if they lose this, I think they're done.
I think the winner of Oregon-Washington is a lock to go in. Okay. I think that's just a done deal. And I'm picking Oregon.
I am as well.
Oregon has a much better running game and a much better defense.
Okay. Yeah, and we saw, Michael Penix and not just him, but Washington struggle a little bit last week. Oregon, I think, is rolling, so I think that will be Oregon as well. So that would knock Washington out. All right, so Michigan and Iowa. Is that right?
Yes.
So I don't think there's much discussion there. Obviously, Iowa is a great defense, but not that great. So, I feel confident Michigan's winning. So Michigan is in. Do you disagree?
It's going to be a slugfest. I think Iowa will. They played 2 years ago for the conference championship, and everybody's like, "Oh, Michigan won 40-14 or something." But it was like 17-14 going into the fourth quarter, and then Michigan finally wore them down.
I think I remember that, and just like a pick six, and then
a couple Blake Corum runs, and
right.
So okay. I think it's a tough fought game. Something that's going to be interesting to watch is Zach Zinner, Michigan's All-American potential.
He had surgery.
Broke his tibia and fibula. I think Will Johnson, their All-American potential cornerback, is going to be out. But honestly, I don't even know why Iowa throws to – I don't even know why they put wide receivers out there. They should go 6 linemen and 2 tight ends. 3 tight ends? Yeah, let's go 3 tight ends. A quarterback and a running back, and just call it good.
Yep.
Because your wide receivers aren't going to catch a ball.
No, and they're probably not good blockers either.
No. So I'm going to say that that's not a big deal. Will Johnson being out, I would rest him. But no, Michigan wins that game.
Okay. So as of now, we're saying Michigan is in. Obviously, they won. We're saying Oregon won. They're in. Okay, so Alabama, Georgia. So this could make things interesting. Who's going to win this?
Georgia.
Okay. So in that scenario, then Georgia, Michigan are in. Washington is out. So then if Florida State wins, they're in. So that would be our top 4 would be Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Florida State, or Florida State, Oregon?
Oregon, Florida State, I think.
Okay.
I think they won't penalize Florida State and keep them out, but I think they will say if Jordan Travis was there, you'd be 3, but Jordan Travis is not there, so you're 4.
Okay.
Which I think everybody at this point is hoping to get Florida State in the playoffs.
And I think, look, if they win it, win this conference championship game against Louisville, they deserve to get in. But I think once they're in, they're going to get the Notre Dame treatment. They're going to get blasted. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think you're right. We have all these rankings and we have these conference championship and we talk about all these things and we have this college football playoff rankings, and then to disregard it because a player is hurt, even though they kept winning, I think you can't do that. So, but I think if they lose, they're definitely obviously out. No chance. So, all right. Well, that kind of wraps up both championship week predictions and the college football scenarios. So there's that. Hopefully, if you're listening, whatever, give us your thoughts. Obviously, it can get really interesting if Alabama wins, if Florida State loses, Washington loses. Because then you get all these one-loss teams vying to get in. Should be interesting. Make sure you set aside some time to watch these college footballs this weekend, and make sure that you got a lot of ice cold beer to go with it. So before we wrap up the show, we are going to get Coach Tuck's lock and upset of the week coming for this week.
All right, I'm not going to pin you on this, but once we're off, because we're running pretty long, I want you to tell me, if Alabama beats Georgia, are they both in? We can do that, just the two of us, and make everybody who listens wonder what our thoughts are. All right, my lock of the week: U of M over Iowa.
Okay.
I went against my Maize and Blue last week. I got to make good with the fan base. So I'm going U of M. I think it is the most sure of the Power Fives. I think that one is just the most guaranteed. My upset, I am going Boise over UNLV. I have pulled for the Running Rebels all season until they got in. And in my mind, they should have been out of the championship game. So I am pulling for Boise State. Idaho is a beautiful state. So is Nevada, but Idaho is a beautiful state. I love the mountains, so I'm going Boise.
All right, I like it. All right, so please make sure if you're listening, subscribe, follow us on all our social medias. As I said, our YouTube channel, like and subscribe, share. Our X accounts, we've got Mental Dimes, and then at Mental Dimes and at Mental Dimes CFB, and we've got our Facebook page. Please share, like, give us good ratings. You can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Music, as well as watch us on our YouTube channel. So another great week. We will be back next week to talk about how these conference championships went and start looking at some of the bowl games and the college football playoff landscape. Be a little more settled. So thank you for listening. Until next time, Coach, we will see you then.
See ya.